In the first block, we had to write the common fraction. In the second block, the percentage. And in the last block, the decimal fraction. So let's look at the examples. It's very important to always simplify your common fraction. But it's also difficult because if you simplify it, you actually change the denominator to a number that is difficult to convert back to percentage and decimal fraction. So always write it as 100 or as tenth or as 1,000, and then just simplify it after you've done the conversions. For the first example, you will see it says 10 out of 100. So it's actually 10 on 100. But if you look at this picture, it's already simplified and you write 1/10. You use the 10 on 100 to get 10% as well as 0.1 that you can get from 1/10. The second example is 1/5, and if you look at the first example, you will see 20 blocks are shaded, so that would be 20 on 100, which gives you 20%, which gives you 0.2. You could have also changed this to 2/10. If you times by 2, what you do at the top, you must do at the bottom. Then the next example, the whole figure is shaded. That means it's one whole. So it's 1 on 1 or 100 on 100, but you have to simplify. So it's 1 on 1. It's 100%. Why? You get 100 out of 100 for the test. So 100%, no errors. And then as a decimal fraction, you need to say 1,0. You cannot just say 1, then it's not a decimal fraction. So you need to have the comma in order for you to prove that it's a decimal fraction. Then we've got a quarter, 1/4. It's actually also 25 hundredths. Here's your 25, here's your quarter. And then that's 25% because it's 25 over 100, and it's 0.25 as a decimal fraction. You've got 3/4, which actually equals to 75 hundredths, and it's 75%. So that's why I've written that in brackets for you. And then 0.75. 1/100 or 1/100ths, that is 1%, 0.01. Why? Because you are busy with hundredths, which means it's 2 places after the comma. So you say 0.01. And then the last example is 5 out of 100. There you go, 5/100. If you have to simplify it, you would say 1/20. So there's only 1 out of the 20. What did you do? You divide it by 5 and then again divide it by 5. What is your percentage? You need to look at the hundredths. So it's 5% and the decimal fraction 0.05. So it's important, grade 6s, you can't use the 20 or the 4 to convert your decimal fractions. You need to work with tenths, hundredths, or thousands. For the second worksheet, you needed to color in certain parts of the shapes. If you work with percentage, you are actually working with a fraction. So you need to convert those percentages back to fractions, and then you can just color in. 50% is equal to a half, 25% is equal to 1/4, and 75% equals to 3/4. So if we look at the 50%, first shape is 1 out of the 2 blocks must be shaded, 2 out of the 4, 1 out of the 2. Then here you have 50 blocks that had to be colored in. Here you've got 2 triangles. Here you have 5 triangles. This learner actually shaded 2 smaller triangles to make one big one, and again 2 smaller ones to make one big one. But you could just shade 5 anywhere in this picture. Then here you have 5 triangles again, 5 on the one side, 5 on the other, so that gives you 10. So 5 out of the 10 must be shaded to give you 1/2. Here you have 3 out of 6, and here you have 5 out of 10 again. So these three shapes are actually exactly the same, 5 out of 10, 5 and 5, but they just have different shapes or different forms. For the next one, you have a quarter, so 1 out of the 4 blocks must be colored in. Again, 1 out of 4. 2 out of 8, remember, 2 out of 8 simplified is divided by 2, and then you get a quarter. You have 25 blocks that needed to be colored in. 1 triangle, 2 triangles. Here we have 2 triangles again. Why? Because there's 8 in total. Second last shape, you have 3 triangles out of the 12 that needed to be colored in, and here you have 4 out of 16. So again, 4 out of 16, you just divide by 4 and you have 1 over 4, 1/4. So you need to then change the denominator back to a quarter. 75% equals to 3/4. So here you have 6 out of the 8 blocks. 3. Here you had to color in 15 out of the 20. Here is 75 out of 100. This is 3 out of the 4. Here you have 9 out of 12. Okay, so 9 out of the 12 had to be colored in. Here you have 12 out of the 16. So you have to count how many there is in total first, and then decide how much is 3/4 of that. So how much is 3/4 of 16? It was 12. Here you have 3 out of the 4, and the last example again was 6 out of the 8. So all of these fractions are actually equivalent to each other. Different denominators, they all end up back to 75% or 3/4. It's actually quite difficult, grade 6s, to mark your own work because you don't really see your mistakes. So please look thoroughly at the following examples as you needed to circle dots. Okay, so count carefully and then you mark. You could have circled them individually as well. You would see I've grouped them on this memo, but you could have just circled them individually. Just count the amount of dots. So for the first one, they ask 50%, which is again a half. Here you needed to circle 2 dots, 4 dots. Here you've got 16 out of the 32 dots. You had to decide how many was there in total and then what was half of that total. So it's 16. Here you've got 8. Here you've got 14 out of the 28. 6 out of the 12. 12 out of 24. And then 10 out of 20. Does not have to be these exact ones. You could have circled them anywhere in your block as long as the amount of circles are correct. Then for 25%, which is a quarter, you have 1, 2, 8. So this was 8 out of 32. Here we've got 4 out of 16, 7 out of 28, 3 out of 12. So some of you would have probably just circled these 3 at the left, but we just showed you that the 3 can be anywhere. Then 6 out of the 24 and 5 out of 20. Last one, 75% is 3/4. So 3 out of 4. This one is 6 out of 8. This one is 24 out of 32. 12 out of 16. 21 out of 28. 9 out of 12. 18 out of 24. And 15 out of 20. So please make sure you have circled the correct amount of circles.